greatest thing your eyes have ever beheld. He was a king and a god in the world he knew. Kong, the eighth wonder of the world.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Analysis of radioactivity of the creature's footprint shows the existence of strontium-90, a product of the H-bomb. Let us call this creature Godzilla.
Being instinctive rivals, there's no doubt that they will attempt to destroy one another.
You have no idea what's coming.
The question is, will and can King Kong versus Godzilla happen?
This is not a Freddy versus Jason. This is not an Aliens versus Predator. This is the matchup of two screen behemoths that we've always wanted.
Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to another Ramblin' Live. I'm your host, JonathanCat79, aka Chris, joined by my usual co-host, Derek, aka Dark Neon.
Greetings, fellow fans of Kaiju everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And our other usual co-host on these type of Kaiju-sized events, my good friend, Ian, aka Werewolf River.
Werewolf River has a brain about this size. He is sheer brute force. While Jonesy and Dark Neon are thinking animals. Their brains are considerably larger. Being instinctive rivals, there is no doubt that they will talk about some movies for a while.
Oh yeah, that definitely works. So, funny story about this episode is that you could argue this was a long time in the making, much like the Clash that this movie is referring to. We made a fresh off the boat review when this movie came out during the height of the pandemic, real world events and stuff, and I never put that up because I wanted to put stuff to it. And then we had to re-record it because I felt like we were just too busy summarizing shit and not actually like breaking it down. So we did break down a few little things, and then that never got up because I wanted to edit in footage from our actual recording of watching it, because there's a part where we get like super rah into it when there's some action on screen, and well, that'll probably be uploaded as an archival thing. But this thumbnail that you're seeing right now, minus the avatars added to it, was originally what that thing was going to be, and I think it comes from a Battleship game crossover from some mobile game. But I thought it just looked too cool that it would be great to have that as the image for Godzilla and Kong. So this episode has come about because, well, this week we're on the verge of another MonsterVerse movie coming out, Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire, or Godzilla X Kong if you actually want to read into it. But I think everyone agrees that even in the Japanese titles like Godzilla and Mechagodzilla, that is Godzilla and Mechagodzilla, but people call it Godzilla X Mechagodzilla because there's a big old X.
Yep. Godzilla X. The only exception is Godzilla X Mega Gears. It seems like most people read that as versus, even though that one's also an X.
And then, of course, you're confusing some fans because people type in Godzilla X Kong and get a bunch of interesting art, where Mothra should be the one saying, hey, I should be in there.
Yeah. It's like the joke of looking up Sonic X Shadow. It's like, make sure to put the subtitle at the end. That way you don't get...
Oh my gosh, what was Sega thinking?
Yeah.
They were thinking we're gonna clean slate by having everyone looking up this game rather than all of the shipping art.
Yeah.
But it just made people think of more of the shipping art. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
True, but now if you just Google Sonic X Shadow, the first thing that's going to come up is the game.
That's
So
good. That's good. So yeah, so of course we're here to talk about. We figured we might as well talk about the movie that came before it. Godzilla versus Kong. Before we got to Godzilla and Kong, and it's kind of weird where we're at right now, given that before when we first made this thing, Godzilla minus one didn't exist, and we'll probably get into this more later into the final segment of this video. But uh, we're living in a post minus one world, which sounds weird to say, but that really has changed the ball game for a lot of people, and it started this huge, almost Marvel-esque civil war about what should and shouldn't be representative of the fandom. And some of us are sitting here on the sideline going, "It's okay to have your metaphor for nuclear destruction and your fun, two giant figures clashing at each other type movie every now and then." The franchise has existed that way for 70 years.
Yeah. Just that way since literally the beginning. Like at first it was immediately like the first Godzilla movie is like, super serious and dark. And then as soon as like you get to like, even just the third movie in the series, which is the original King Kong versus Godzilla, suddenly you're having like, Groucho Marx being,
Mr. Taco.
Yeah, Mr. Taco.
And his very famous
no more.
Yeah.
Are you sick, Godzilla?
Yeah. I want my own monster.
Which is perfect
Come
to
on.
use whenever people have a long Godzilla marathon. Say most audiences after 24 hours from 54 to minus one marathon, no more.
Yeah.
Or if you're someone like me who's been forced to watch the anime trilogy, we'll literally just play that clip as soon as the credits roll.
But at least Mothra made a nice little shadow cameo.
Yeah. A shadow.
But yeah.
Mothra starring Mothra's shadow in Mechagodzilla City.
Oh goodness. But Godzilla versus Kong. Now this is a very interesting junction because I remember back in the day, before even getting big into Godzilla, that everyone talked about the fabled King Kong versus Godzilla. Like it was in VHS stores. It was in when you read history books about movie monsters and Godzilla and stuff, they tend to have a big chapter focus on the time East met West. It was like a big deal. It was like a big boxing match because you got your famous cinematic icon over here versus the newcomer kid, and it was for a long time Toho's most successful attended movie because not for a long time no other Godzilla movie came close to matching the numbers this one did back in the day in 1962 dollars.
And not only that, but it's like the basic general consensus of a giant ape fighting a fire-breathing lizard is kind of like seeped into like the pop culture fanfare, especially in stuff like in the Rampage video games where you have George and Lizzie, or like as obscure as like this series of like one-shot comics from the Disney Adventure days called Gorilla, where it's like a gorilla and a lizard are like roommates, but like unknowingly they're also their worst enemies since they can grow into enormous sizes and fight each other.
Oh, why hasn't that been turned into a cartoon?
Yeah, or like even what was it? It was it was like even like an episode of like The Pup Named Scooby Doo, where it's like even just like something small where it's like they're running in front of a movie screen and just there's like a giant lizard fighting a lizard with like legally distinct spine, dorsal spines, fighting a giant gorilla, and it's like they know what they're talking.
Yeah, what's funny is that movie didn't start out life like that. As many Kong historians probably looked into, and as you could look more into yourself if you're curious, is that Willis O'Brien wanted to make a follow-up to King Kong, one of his biggest, contributions to cinema. I mean, the original King Kong is a classic, and it's been heralded and inspired a lot of people. So, of course, he wanted to go ahead and go back to that world. I mean, they did Son of Kong, but that one kind of was more of an epilogue to King Kong. And he wanted to do an idea where King Kong was still alive from his fall from the Empire State Building, and that there was a Dr. Frankenstein descendant who decided to like stitch together different animal parts and like elephant's hide and everything to make this monster called Ginkgo or Frankenstein. And eventually the Frankenstein monster would break out of its captivity and Kong would end up releasing, and they both would fight each other and then fall into the ocean, never to be seen again. That was the general idea for King Kong versus Frankenstein, and to avoid confusion he later renamed it to King Kong versus Prometheus.
Yeah, like the original title. And then the script was inevitably given over to John Beck, who kind of stole the idea and did a bunch of like negotiating without Willis O'Brien's like involvement. And that's how it ended up overseas. And of course became, King Kong versus Godzilla.
What's funny though is that Toho did still keep the Frankenstein idea in mind because they did go on to make their own Frankenstein-based movies with Frankenstein Conquers the World, which was Frankenstein versus Baragon, and Horror de Gargantuas, which is sort of a pseudo sequel to that movie.
Yeah. And it's definitely its own like little interesting tale of like the gigantic Frankenstein monster, and like Toho would even want to do one earlier that would have had like Frankenstein fighting this obscure creation of theirs called the Human Vapor, but that screenplay I don't think was ever finished.
But yeah. So Godzilla versus King Kong. What's funny is this is both the third movie for either franchise, and it's both the first time they appeared in color. And it's pretty much Godzilla Raids Again was the prototype of how they would do their fighting movies, and then it was quite a little uneven. It was more like a remake of '54 with extra stuff, and then they decided to fine tune it in King Kong vs. Godzilla, which still wasn't quite there yet. By the time they got to Godzilla vs. the Thing, aka Mothra vs. Godzilla, that's when they perfected how they would do their versus movies.
Yeah, how they perfect the formula of like, because like with Raids Again, you have Godzilla and Anguirus fighting, but then like Anguirus dies like midway through, and then the rest of the time it's just Godzilla himself, and then King Kong versus Godzilla is the one that came with the idea of like, well, okay, you set the monsters up, then you have a mid-movie fight, then they both go their own separate ways, and then they come back for a final fight at the end, or at the very least, King Kong versus Godzilla was the one that figured out have the fight at the end, have the big fight at the end of the movie, make that the big spectacle rather than just having a thing in the middle, like it did with Raids Again.
Yeah, and Mothra vs. Godzilla I think was a much more better, that's the prototypical Showa movie, I think, for like the serious but also lighthearted Showa movies, Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. But King Kong vs. Godzilla was such a big hit, even though you could argue that the American version is definitely a different beast than the Japanese version. In fact, I think the Japanese version is, as blasphemous as it may sound, is a little uneven, and it's more satirical in making fun of like giant medical corporations needing like mascots and advertising campaign and television stuff, and the monsters are kind of like just vessels for that rather than being characters, if that makes sense. I mean, Kong has character, but Godzilla really is just all destruction, no emotion, which is funny, which is funny given what happens later. But and then at least in King Kong versus Godzilla, they went to the King of the Monsters route of adding American scenes filmed with an American actor, and you get some iconic lines from there that aren't in the original, but people ascribe to it, like the whole Godzilla's brain is the size of this marble and Kong's a thinking animal. All that stuff comes from that famous, American stock footage, which is integrated well with the Japanese stuff. There's a few weird things about it, like there's that the way the natives are depicted. If you, it's 1962, so some of you guys might be just cringing and looking left and right about those are clearly not islanders. They're just people with spray on tans. And well, it was the 60s, so
yeah, it was the 60s. It's a Japanese movie. It's it's what can you expect? It's just
it's not really malicious, but it's like it's like when you go to watch an old World War II cartoon and you see the Japanese soldiers portrayed in a certain way, you kind of go like, ooh. Yeah, so other than that, I think it holds up pretty well, but everyone's been saying the same thing for almost 50 plus years. When are we going to get another version of that? Like even if you watch famous Godzilla historian channels like Up from the Depths, D-Man for 1954, or even Cinemassacre, Angry Video Game Nerd, they always say the same thing. This is a movie that is due for an update, and it almost happened so many times in the they tried to do a sequel, I think, and that was shot down right away. Then they tried to do it in the 80s and 90s, but at that point, the rights to Kong were with Turner Classic Movies, and they were charging a hefty fee that more than Toho was willing to get for licensing a monster just for a thing. They thought they could be sneaky by doing Godzilla versus Mechani-Kong, because they say, hey, we actually invented Mechani-Kong from this King Kong Escapes movie, let's use that. And they say, it's still a giant metal gorilla named after Kong, that's still legally gray, so we're still going to say, pay us, even though they made Mechani-Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly, and it's kind of funny because like the sequel to King Kong vs. Godzilla that we almost had, I think was gonna have like King Kong having some sort of meaningful relationship with a child, and that's only interesting because of what happened later, you know. So,
but you just have to argue. I guess Godzilla's strongest enemy isn't, a cyborg double or even a monster titan. No, his greatest enemy seems to be lawyers, because
yep,
licensing rights and lawyers, like everyone's supposed to be.
yeah,
But
Good luck trying to pit this guy against Gamera.
oh
yeah.
god.
Oh,
But the eventually, that kind of went into the ether of like, okay, we might never see these two come together again. Even though interest in both have still been pretty strong. I mean, we had him in the Millennium Era, and then Peter Jackson gave us that wonderful love letter to the original in his uh, admittedly self-indulgent, overstuffed, beautiful movie King Kong 2005, Peter Jackson's King Kong, which I think it was that point people were wondering, are we going to see these two get together again? And then, well, King Kong fell into his own legal problems. But like, there's the novel that's public domain, but there's also the rights that are held by Universal currently, and it's just it'll make your head spin just look into it. But that's a whole interesting topic on itself. But long story short,
Too late.
long story short, the idea eventually floated up again when Godzilla found a successful revival in Godzilla 2014. I mean, that's what the fans call it, but the Godzilla movie released in 2014 by Gareth Edwards. And at that same time, Universal was pitching to do a new King Kong movie. And somehow Legendary managed to wrestle the rights to license Kong for a Warner Brothers produced King Kong movie in Kong Skull Island. And that's when everyone's gears started going, whoa, wait a second. Are they actually going to actually happen this time? Are we actually going to see these two fight after almost 50 plus years?
We haven't seen that kind of built up anticipation and thinking ahead of like what might be since 2008's after credits, where Nick Fury went to Tony Stark said, "Here to teach you about the Avengers Initiative."
Interestingly enough, Nick Fury appeared in the Kong movie that ended up leading to all this. He was Packard. And useless trivia.
If you want a successful shared universe, just put Samuel Jackson in it.
Maybe that's where Universal went wrong with their Dark Universe. They didn't put no Sam Jackson in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gears were turning, and of course it was all but confirmed when we actually watched the end credits to Kong Skull Island, where Monarch is established, and they say, "Listen, Kong is not the only king we're worried about," and they showed every other monster was coming up in the upcoming Godzilla King of the Monsters, and that's when everyone was going, "Well, now they're actually connected. Are we actually going to see them fight?" And lo and behold, they after that movie was successful, and they announced after Godzilla 2, which became King of the Monsters, we would be getting an official King Kong versus Godzilla movie. And everyone was both happy and worried, especially when they found out who was attached. A little then horror director named Adam Wingard, whose credits at that point included movies like You Are Next, the 2013 Blair Witch movie, I think was
2016.
Yeah, 2016.
It was originally called The Woods as a clever marketing ploy. Then they renamed it to Blair Witch to say this is actually connected to the Blair Witch movie from '98. And 99. I'm sorry. Godzilla was 98.
I am diehard about this thing. Don't fuck this up.
Yeah, Blair Witch for you, Alien for me. Okay, so he did those, but at that same time, he also did a little movie on Netflix called Death Note with Willem Dafoe, but they don't really talk about that.
Oh.
I also forgot they existed.
Yeah,
it's
a thing. I mean, Willem Dafoe is.
That was Netflix, seemingly.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe as Ryuk is actually a good idea. It's a pity he didn't have a proper light and L to work with, but and all that aside, though, Adam is a genre fan, and him being picked for Godzilla vs. Kong kind of seemed to be following the tradition of getting these small indie guys who have big ambitions for the monsters. Like you had Gareth Edwards, who did his own little mini film, Monsters Before Graduating to Godzilla. You got Michael Dougherty, who mostly writes for big shows like Smallville and his own movies like Trick or Treat. Here he is doing King of the Monsters. And now we got Adam Wingard. And after King of the Monsters came out, it did meet for some reason a lukewarm reception. I don't know, and it didn't help that it came out in the vortex of summer 2019 when Avengers Endgame came out, and every other movie was like just barely a ripple after that monument.
Yeah.
Which is
the odds were not in its favor. Yeah.
But apparently King Kong versus Godzilla met a delay, and but it had nothing to really to do with King of the Monsters' performance. But I think Warner Brothers is really like, let's retool it a bit to be a little more, because the MonsterVerse, as it is now called, has been having a couple of, let's dare say, notes from the fans about the focus. You know, they feel that even though we come to pay to see particular monsters, the focus is always on these other things that some people might consider superfluous to the film, but you know they're necessary to keep the movie going with general audience. Human characters like Bryan Cranston's Joe Brody and the Russell family in King of the Monsters, and it sounded like people were like, Adam was finally going to give us a movie that was like, those elements are still there about the human element to keep the things going along, but it was actually going to be, listen, people paid money to see Godzilla and King Kong. We're going to show them Godzilla and King Kong.
Yeah, and we're going to make sure that the human stuff, which is still there, is admittedly a little more connected, than it kind of felt like it was at times with like 2014 and even Kong Skull Island, where it's like, you have these human characters interacting, and sometimes it does feel real, but it did kind of feel like it was sort of like pulling the focus away, whereas like, even with like Godzilla -1, like the family stuff was set up to be threatened later on by, Godzilla himself, whereas like, with King of the Monsters stuff, it felt a little more, and I still like King of the Monsters even, but it did feel a little more uneven, in that situation.
Well, I read someone say if you take out a few scenes, that actually becomes more concise. I mean, but anyway, one thing that was addressed that we saw in the first art and previews was the fact that everyone kept saying King of the Monsters is great, but the fights were murky and dark because there's all this storm effects and it's like shadowy and all that stuff. I mean, it was not AVPR dark, mind you, but people were in 2014 for some reason had a weird transfer where we released that at home. The Muto versus Godzilla fights can be very dark depending on your monitor settings.
Yeah.
But with this movie, the fights happen in the daytime, like the fight on the aircraft carrier, or the fights happen in a very well lit city, a la Pacific Rim. So it feels like all the criticisms and critiques people have had about the MonsterVerse in the past are addressed. Where that comes together will depend on your mileage, but mileage will vary between person to person. But I think for most people who want to see awesome monster fights in a big urban environment with a great budget, this movie is definitely a culmination. In fact, for some reason, Godzilla vs. Kong kind of has a feeling of finality. Like this is like everything has been leading to this. But of course, one teeny tiny thing that became a big thing happened was that this movie was going to come out, I think, at the 2020 sharp, and of course, us having lived with it 4 years into it now, the world kind of hit the brakes on itself because of a thing I'm not going to go into, but you all know what we're talking about. So of course, theatrical stuff was in question. It was pushed back to maybe this will pass within a year or so. And then we add a new element, which is streaming, which is HBO Max was launched. And they said we needed to have people, subscribers, because they were already there before the pandemic, but, they needed a bigger draw. But now that theaters were kind of hurt, and they said, well, bring the theater at home, home box office, HBO. So Godzilla vs. Kong was one of the first few movies. I mean, it wasn't the first, but it was among the first few movies Warner Brothers released direct to home the same day they were doing theaters, because some theaters were open in some states and some weren't, and for those that weren't, they would go to this. And of course, Godzilla vs. Kong did boost up a few signups for that thing. I know it's one of the reasons I kept HBO Max at the time, because I got to see Mortal Kombat, Dune, and Godzilla vs. Kong at home. Okay, but anyway, hold on. Oh, sorry. I thought I saw something. Anyway, so all that preamble aside, let's go ahead and talk about the movie itself. So first of all, guys, do you guys remember how you guys first saw this movie?
Yeah, I was streaming. I saw it was streaming, and I'd seen it after doing a Godzilla versus Kong-a-thon with my dad and my brother. Basically, like every day we would watch a Godzilla versus Kong movie. We started with the original 1933 movie, then the original 1954 movie with Goji, and then we did the original King Kong versus Godzilla, and then it was Son of Godzilla, Son of Kong. King Kong escapes Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla because they both have mechanical doubles, and then Kong 76 and Kong and Godzilla 1984, which I'll always remember because I watched the very sad ending to the original 1976 movie. And it's deeply involved in the emotions, but I couldn't help but making the joke of when Jeff Bridges looking down and being like, "Well, they finally did it. They killed my fucking King Kong, man." And
Big
then,
Lebowski rep.
yeah, and then it was Shin Godzilla and King Kong 2005, and then the MonsterVerse movies, and then we finally went into that via streaming. My brother came over, and it did feel like a big event, and it was funny because like we could watch the movie and also like make comments while we were doing it, which we usually don't get to do with like big release like that, and our feelings were so raw. And we were having moments of like trying to put together like, oh, where's the plot gonna go? Where it's like, oh well, see this is what's going on. Like we already kind of knew like Apex, we knew what was going on. But it was a fun experience.
That's
With me
great.
and like yeah.
I also remember the favor of pick a team, Team Kong, Team Godzilla. I know Derek was firmly in the Team Godzilla camp from day one.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what gives you that idea.
And then I think I for some reason was going Team Kong for whatever reason, even though Godzilla was my first monster love, so to speak. But I don't know, maybe I was rooting for the underdog type feeling, and I mean King Kong did win in the past before apparently, because you all remember the famous bullshit story about how one article said, "Oh, in Japan, Godzilla would win, and in America, Kong would win." And of course, as James Rolfe would tell you, that double ending myth was nothing but a load of bullshit.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day trying desperately to like find it like going on because I remember first hearing about that from my cousin, and like constantly desperately trying to find it somewhere, and then finding out it didn't exist and being like, why am I not surprised?
I would bet you anything there's a dedicated fan who actually try to re-edit it in a way to make said endings possible.
Yeah, it's sort of like Peter Jackson when he recreated the spider pit scene. Yeah, when he recreated the spider pit scene from the 1933 movie and then put it on the King Kong 1933 DVD from, yeah.
I found it funny that he found cast members that looked almost similar, identical to the guys that were in the 33 film. That's what made it really funny.
Yeah, really funny and really interesting. And sorry.
So, and Derek, I think you, of course, had to see it through streaming on your end, right?
I'm gonna. I mean, I did get to see it, but I'm pretty sure. I am definitely certain it was open. The theaters were open around me at that time, because I managed to get my dad to go see it on the big screen proper. Yeah, I knowing my type of MO, I would probably take the chance to see it in a theater first. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I got to see it in the theater, and because it was so good, I managed to go home and actually boot it up to see it.
Yeah, see it with me because I wanted to do a thing with watching it with you too. My sister too. She had a Team Godzilla shirt on for that.
It was the exact same one, but mine was blue.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I just going back a bit because I kind of jumped ahead. One thing I loved was we kept hearing that there's a Godzilla versus King Kong trailer coming, and out of nowhere, in the middle of December, they popped out probably the most hype trailer for any MonsterVerse movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It tells you what kind of tone you're set for, because it had like some semi-serious stuff with Alexander Skarsgård describing, how much Kong is needed, and then when they finally have Godzilla and Kong meet in the thing, you get that now iconic image of Godzilla crawling onto the aircraft carrier and Kong just giving him a big haymaker, all while some very intense workout music plays. That's the best way to describe the Here We Go song. Although
dooming apocalyptic workout music, it's like you're bench pressing the end of days.
Although, I mean, come on, it had that little techno, and they have that beat going like, yeah, bum, 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 and then they just go ahead and just, like I said, and you just that first hit, it felt like a shotgun, man. Like, damn. Now, only 2 missteps with that trailer that have nothing to do with it, but it has to do with our current day culture of having to analyze every single frame and accidentally catching surprise you're not supposed to catch. Like during the opening scene of the exploding mountain, you can actually see a red laser, emanating thing. You realize is that a dragon, a machine? And then right behind Ren Sarazawa, you see a readout display, and I'm going, if you guys had just taken those out of that trailer, the big surprise at the end would have probably been much more of a oops. But then again,
to be fair, it wasn't as egregious as Batman vs Superman just blatantly having Doomsday slide into the frame right in the middle. It's like, oh well, I guess we all know where the fight's going to end up going to be focused on now.
And what's weird about that one is they actually had a kick-ass trailer before. The Comic-Con trailer is one of the best trailers ever, where it's like it has the whole bit with the Red Capes are coming, and it ends with Batman and Superman staring at each other after ripping off the Batmobile doors.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that was and even the trailer even makes it look like Jesse Eisenberg's going to be a good Lex Luthor. Like he actually looks like threatening. And then the second trailer came out, and it's like, oh, that's where you're going with it.
Lex, which is not bad, but you're still laughing. Going, you got him like, ooh, you do not want to pick a fight with this guy, like being a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
But other than that, you're right. GVK. Actually, I think Godzilla vs Kong only ever had one trailer, which is good because one of the complaints about King of the Monsters was they released too much TV spots and trailers that you could actually probably piece together a decent cut of the movie just with the advertising material alone.
Yeah.
Although I think the poor son of a bitch who had to deal with that the most was actually Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, definitely.
Goodness. That's turning 10 this year. Damn, where did time go?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, but yeah, so on to this one. So I guess we can all agree that the human story is an interesting take on it because we have elements added. Like we got it's developed into 2 camps. We got Team Kong and Team Godzilla. And
in the movie, to actually represent the fandom itself, which was really fun,
Because you got returning character Madison Russell played by Millie Bobby Brown, and she got her friend Josh finding this conspiracy podcast guy named Bernie, played by Brian Tyree Henry. And they're all about some corporate conspiracy going on. At the same time, you got Team Kong, which is Rebecca Hall's Dr. Andrews with Dr. Nathan Lynn, played by Alexander Skarsgård, needing to use Kong to find a source of, the Titan origin, the Hollow Earth itself, because that was established way back in King Kong Skull Island that there's a hidden ecosystem underneath the Earth. And I think they do a good job of balancing out. I think personally, the Team Kong stuff has more emotional investment because you got the character of Gia, where she's a deaf Iwi girl who can communicate with Kong, and that's where your heart is. And I think I said it's nice to have a relationship with Kong and another human that isn't based solely on, oh, he wants to do with this pretty blonde lady.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually built on oh, it's so kind and sweet, I remember when my brother first saw that, he actually liked the relationship so much, and you can tell he liked it because he said, "Oh, they should totally kill her off to make Kong more motivated to fight Godzilla."
Oh, goodness gracious!
What is wrong with you?
Well, that's who he is.
I know. I met your brother. He's a cool guy. But
yeah,
that does make sense. In fact, I even told Derek, "Oh, there's a shot in the trailer where Kong looks a little distressed. Maybe something happened to his caretaker." And I said, "Oh, that's great. We need Godzilla to kill even more kids." Which, after watching Monarch: Legacy of Monsters,
ooh, yeah,
a whole school bus fell down.
Yeah. While he was just walking through a bridge.
Yeah.
If you think that shot looks cool, think of what was happening behind the scenes. Think of it. Hear their screams.
Like someone said, they literally said, and someone said, "Oh, well, I guess they really are trying to make that Man of Steel connection now."
Yeah.
Okay, but the Gia Kong stuff really does bring you in Like, because Kong is more empathetic than Godzilla, and that comes naturally from the fact that he's a simian creature and he has a face that emotes. And apparently, there's some guidelines out there that say Godzilla has strict things. He cannot be killed on screen in a very easy way. He can't, emote, show emotions, because at the end, they're trying to get away from the kitschy Showa films where he'd be like doing dances in space. But I think Adam Wingard found a way to circumvent those by making some key little things. But Kong generally would be the guy that is more relatable, if that makes sense.
Does he's the one who, like you say, he's more expressive, and he's been that way. Unlike Godzilla, he's kind of been that way since the beginning. Like even the original 33 film, like part of the appeal was that he could emote. And like he kind of would like he'd be like really angry, but he'd have moments where he's like really sad, like looking at his scarred hand, being like, oh, like I don't know what's going on. Like he's just a kind of poor, confused animal who's the last of his kind.
And what's funny is even though he's quote unquote the bad monster smashing stuff apart, doesn't matter who you are, every movie that has had him has always found a way to make you feel for him by the end when he's either getting shot down or when he's like just, you can't help but feel for him.
Yeah, no, you can't, and it's interesting because in some ways, Godzilla and Kong are like polar opposites, but then they're also kind of very similar because even Godzilla kind of has that angle of like being the last of his kind, and that's how, and even though he's not as like, because we don't notice it as much because he's not as helpless as Kong. Like obviously bullets and everything bounce off him, but he's still the result of like man's carelessness. Like Kong isn't created by man's carelessness, but he's still kind of a victim of it because he gets taken out of his own. He gets taken out of his home. And, I mean, Godzilla also does, too, when it's like a nuclear bomb, like, blows up his, underwater grotto and he's forced to wander around a world he's not familiar with, and they both, it's interesting how they both kind of have that connection, but they're also so, like, radically different,
One's a suit, one's a model, and the Super Raya was inspired by King Kong. That's why when he started making a giant monster movie, he thought, I can finally make my own King Kong, and like he said, he told Haruo Nakajima, they told me it would take like 8 months to make a stop motion model. I need you to do 8 years to make a stop motion model. I need you to do this in 8 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Kong would be the one where you'd feel for what his storyline is, and it's definitely much more adventurous because you got him going through portals and going into like the Hollow Earth itself in a very Sir Arthur Conan Doyle Lost World style setting, and then you got Team Godzilla with having a few humorous hijinks with the conspiracy theorist guy. But I will say this, for me, rewatching it a couple of times, I think they were taking the criticisms of Millie Bobby Brown's character and King of the Monsters kind of being, well, not really useful to the plot other than a few key moments of like attracting Ghidorah and stuff. They say we only got her because, hey, look, Stranger Things girl, because 2014 we had Breaking Bad guy. Now in King of the Monsters, here's Stranger Things girl. I guess they wanted to give her more of an involved thing, but she almost comes off as a bit of a, I'm sorry if it makes some of you wince, but she does kind of come off as a little bit as a Kenny, being the one that's like constantly advocating for Godzilla in an almost overbearing way. Like, I get it. She's the Team Godzilla advocate, and the fans, if they were in that universe, would be fighting just as hard for Godzilla, but I'm just thinking, like, where did all this come from? It's almost like if her name still wasn't Madison and Mark Russell wasn't her dad, I'd be thinking, oh, we have another character who's obviously a big fan of Godzilla, how he stopped all the Titans and stuff, but I still think that it's very funny how they gave her a more prominent role, and I feel that she's radically different than how she was in King of the Monsters. But
she is in a lot of ways,
but she's still enjoyable to watch. Like, it's so funny to see her like be okay with going into dangerous hallways, seeing where they lead and stuff like that.
Basically being like the she kind of reminds me of the main characters from Godzilla versus Gigan, like the very, they're very willing to like, go into like dangerous situations and like almost evoke like a I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but like an espionage feel, that
and
movies that time.
And I love Bernie. Bernie's just great. In fact, I'm so glad his character is being brought back for New Empire.
Yeah. It's nice to see him, and he's very funny. Like, he's super paranoid about everything, and he's like, "Oh, do you have to go to the bathroom right now? Because that's probably because of the apple you got."
Although I think the only third wheel character, and it's no offense to the actor, he's really great, just Julian Dennison's Josh, which is just there to be the comic relief to bounce off of Madison. So I think the thing that not annoys me, but it's a little bit I would have done differently with Team Godzilla is include Monarch and Mark Russell in a little more. It sounds like a lot got put on the cutting room floor with. Oh crap! What's Mark Russell's actor name again? Kyle Chandler. Kyle Chandler.
Yeah, Kyle Chandler. Yeah.
I said this is a missed opportunity that he played in a King Kong movie back in 2005 as Bruce Baxter. How he never really actually gets to have a scene shared with Kong and GB.
Yeah, with Kong, I was hoping at any moment they'd be like, oh, are you aware? They'd be like running up to him to like try to like read him Kong's stats or something. They'd be like, I know Kong, trust me, I know Kong. And they'd be like, when? And he's like, I don't have time to explain. He just walks away or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I here's another thing. I feel that if spoilers for Kingdom of the Monsters, I feel that if Dr. Serizawa hadn't sacrificed himself in that movie, he would be the guy that is advocating strongly for Godzilla's benign nature, even if he's attacking human cities.
Yeah, I could have even seen him maybe even going on that adventure of like being like with like Madison Cup and Madison, what's his name? Sorry, but I could have seen him like going on like another version of this movie where he goes along with them and maybe even talks to his kaiju hating son.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get to Iran in a second. So
yeah.
Team Kong does have more interesting dynamics. It's pretty funny because you got like the representative of the evil corporation, Apex. You have him sending his daughter to be the babysitter for the whole group, and she always has like some snide remark that makes that even the characters on deck are like, like the part which is throw the monkey overboard, or like, how about we throw you overboard instead?
Yeah.
Apparently, she had a whole different arc going on because Elza Gonzalez, the actress who played Maya Simmons, had gone on record saying that when she first filmed it, there was a totally different storyline, and there was even another character she interacted with that was played by, oh god, her name is eluding me. She was in Iron Fist, and she was in Force Awakens as one of the other pilots that flew.
Jessica Henwick.
That's it, Jessica Henwick. Yeah, she had a whole character in Godzilla vs. Kong, and she was even listed as one of the cast members in the lead up to it. And then they later say we sadly have to cut her character for time because they would try to keep this film as lean as possible. Apparently, the script, if adapted in full, could have been a 5-hour movie. Now, that doesn't mean there's a 5-hour cut of Godzilla vs. Kong out there. It's not like George Lucas's longer Revenge of the Sith cut.
Yeah. Release the Wingard cut.
Oh yeah, that's.
But, yeah.
But yeah. What was I saying? Oh yeah, she had a whole different arc, and she said that they went back for reshoots and ended up shooting the scenes with Maya that led to the exit that she had. But yeah, this movie did go through the edit a couple of times, but I guess judging by its reception and how people liked it, I guess it was all for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, hurt your darlings sometimes if you want to get what your audience is probably hoping to get.
Well, let's talk about this right away. The fact that the Godzilla and King Kong matchup doesn't take nearly half the movie to get to. Because we're setting up the pieces with Apex, we're setting up the pieces with Team Godzilla and Team Kong and the whole thing. And about 30 to 40 minutes in, we get the scene where Jaya hears the vibrations of Godzilla approaching, and we finally get Godzilla and King Kong clashing at each other like 40 minutes into the movie, which is, I think, better than, say, even King Kong versus Godzilla, where it took a while for the two to even stumble on each other's path.
Yeah.
And it took, 20 seconds before they went their separate ways?
Yeah,
exactly.
Just Kong throwing a rock, Godzilla breathing fire, and Kong walking away while scratching his head.
Well, shit, man. I know you know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who thought of this matchup?
Yeah. It's like, you gotta think this through.
Yeah, but there's that thinking animal thinking.
Yeah.
So
I gotta rethink my life choices.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so funny to go back and rewatch King Kong vs. Godzilla and imagine all the lines with a Tommy Chong surfer voice. Yo, man, he's got like a flamethrower, man.
He's got like a flamethrower, man. It's no good. It's no good.
So, yeah, the Tasman Sea fight. I remember that was in all the advertisements, and man, I remember because even if you buy the toys, the back of the box is the scene of Godzilla and Kong on the boat getting ready to punch each other. Now, people were saying, are they on a really big aircraft carrier, or did they shrink them down a bit? And I think the answer was it's actually a big ass aircraft carrier. Like, I know real aircraft carriers are huge, but people were saying, you got these 300+ foot tall monsters standing on the boat, and it's still floating back. There were so many videos about people saying scientifically this should be like you're saying this in a movie with a 300-foot tall ape and a 300-foot tall dinosaur. So
build your bridge and get over it.
Saying that the science has left the building a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. This is science fiction. It's about speculating. It's not about simply regurgitating science.
On top of that, we now have hovercraft and hidden monorails from Florida all the way to China. And I remember Derek saying, "Okay, so we got giant monsters, we got cyborgs, and we got all this stuff, and the monorail, the spacecraft is where you draw your line." You asked the other day.
I just saying, prioritize your complaints.
Oh, yeah. Thankfully, the complaints are your usual obvious ones about dumb humans and no story. That's like the most of the complaints get. You don't get no 3-hour-long videos dissertating about how modern entertainment standards are ruining the MonsterVerse. Thankfully.
Yeah. Thank God.
That's one thing about the Godzilla MonsterVerse is that you have to avoid the BS we have to deal with Marvel and Star Wars about 30 hate channels talking about how this one tiny thing is gonna completely ruin it. Not to say that those Godzilla fans aren't out there. They kind of come out of the woodwork with -1 saying, like, I literally saw a review saying, yeah, this is a fun adventure movie, but it's not -1. I'm like, my brother in Christ,
it's not trying to be -1. It's like, come on, dude. Nothing's gonna be -1. Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm saying though, is that when it comes to like social media Godzilla, the only thing you're gonna get is occasional nitpicks about story decisions and stuff like the aircraft carrier shouldn't be able to sustain their weight.
Yeah. Like Rose and Jack, yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, wait, with Rose and Jack, that's the opposite complaint. The complaint is like, oh no, that should have been able to hold them both, but yeah.
So, I gotta say, this fight really was well done because the one moment I really like is when Godzilla flips the boat over and Kong is drowning, and Dr. Lind has to release him. And there's a moment where the music swells when Godzilla and Kong finally lock hands for the first time in 50 years. And it does feel... The moment I equate it to is like the moment in AVP when the Predator gets impaled by the alien tail and the two actually have a face-off for the first time in 20 years. That's how I would equate the scene when Godzilla grabs King Kong. And they really updated his style to be... Godzilla he's very bitey in this movie.
Yeah, he's very bitey. He's very lizard-like, which he kind of was in Godzilla, in the 2014 Godzilla. I mean, I remember them saying that they looked at like videos of like Komodo dragons fighting, which like if you ever see them fighting, like they're terrifying, and like, again, they are very bitey. And yeah, he's very bitey. He almost does read like a shark or a crocodile the way he, like he uses swimming. I don't want to say uses swimming to his advantage, like something about that almost sounds like juvenile or something to say, but he's just very good in the water. I guess that's what I have. That's what I have to say. He's very good in the water.
We have an audience member that does say Godzilla fan 1995 saying GVK was the Michael Bay movie of Godzilla films. Overall, the character story and actual narrative of the movie was pretty bad, but the redeeming factor for the film was the action. I could see how people would read into it that way. I myself am a fan of the Michael Bay movies, but I could see why the more lore heavy or the more, differently inclined people would say dumb characters, silly plot lines, crash, and I'd say, yeah, you're right, but that's why I like it, actually.
That's the point. You need stuff like that, like if everything, yeah.
Yeah, you can have your refined 5-course meal of Citizen Kane's, and you can have your trashy cheeseburger films of Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, exactly.
You can like both. You like your own taste. But yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like, we're trying to get back to, like, bringing the classic type of monster movies. What people think of monster movies, they should be, like, cheesy, but also, like, really fun. So they're supposed to have that addictive nature of wanting to go back to see it again. And I'm just saying, trying to do the MonsterVerse as serious as like a Godzilla -1 would probably have been the wrong direction to take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because you would be spending more time thinking about like the who's and the whys and the what's and what this all means, instead of, oh, I don't know, paying attention to the fucking fight going on between a
Yeah.
giant monkey and a giant fire-breathing lizard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like another woman I really like is I'm actually going to show this. I don't know if I don't think they'll take the video down. I hope, but there is a moment that I was telling Derek watching is that my anime loving ass is a big Evangelion fan. So there's a moment where King Kong is hopscotching from battleship to battleship, and I said, "This is like that scene with Eva Unit 2 and Oscar Strikes, right?" And he's like, "I guess it's been a while."
Dude, like the last time I actually saw that anime, it was like, I don't fucking know, 2013 maybe.
Oh, it was in the lead up to 3.1, I think, at the time. Oh, good God. Okay, let me just hold on. Just So yeah, as you can see, I'm glad I got that montage together. But I'm not saying it's a one for one, but I couldn't help but think. I think since Adam directed Death Note, he is an anime fan, so I wouldn't be surprised if he threw in a couple of nods to
Yeah.
like those classics like that. Because hell, even in the other MonsterVerse movies like Kong Skull Island, they named a character Ikari on purpose after the Evangelion series.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's just a little fun observation I made. But there's a lot of great homages in this movie in later fights. One thing I like is that they use Godzilla's advantage in the water as like his big, strength in this fight because, uh, it's not going to be like they both fall into the water and then we don't know who wins. It's like, no, we're going to see Godzilla. This is his domain. He almost killed King Ghidorah on his home turf if it wasn't for human intervention. So this movie does show off that yes, Kong is dead in the water if it wasn't for intervention bailing his ass.
Yeah.
And even
sorry.
Go ahead.
And it's interesting in this situation because like it's funny how you bring up the Ghidorah thing because it's kind of this funny moment of like you're seeing sort of what happened in Godzilla King of the Monsters and that when Godzilla of course rises and drags King Ghidorah down, like we're rooting for him, he's like so awesome, but now here it's like, oh, he's dragging someone down, oh shit, but it's Kong, we don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want that. It's suddenly like, you realize like, oh shit, here's how like terrifying he can actually be without like feeling like he's become an entirely different character, and that's what's really cool.
And what's funny is that Godzilla, you could argue that he's not really bad guy coded, but he's definitely much more menacing than we saw him in the other Godzilla movies. Because he's always been like I'm a chill guy that swims under boats. I don't really go out of my way unless you poke me. Whereas in this one, he's all like, I gotta wreck shit when I gotta wreck shit up. Like if you're in my way, sorry, but nothing's getting in my way. Like he goes through battleships, he attacks buildings and people in it, which is probably a complaint people had about the other MonsterVerse movies by saying he's too nice. He doesn't really destroy stuff on purpose, man.
Yeah, he kind of felt like Heisei Gamera, and it's funny because like if you track like Heisei Gamera's like evolution, like in the first two of the '90s Gamera trilogy, like he feels very chill and very heroic, but then in like Gamera 3 Revenge of Eros, we're suddenly seeing like him in that same light of like, oh crap, he actually kills people in these fights. It's that same sort of energy here where it's like we've seen Godzilla's like kind of chill, even like kind of having moments where it's like, oh no, we're so sad for him, like even when like in 2014 when he falls down, it's like, oh no, he's gonna die, and then suddenly here it's like here's fully unleashed what he is, like this full
Well, a tsunami doesn't really care where it hits, and Godzilla is kind of definitely a force of nature, but they don't make him evil, thankfully, because he's on a mission. He's looking for something. And
it does come at the detriment of the one thing that pisses Jonesy off every time this movie comes playing, the downgrade of Godzilla's theme, apparently.
It sounded like bootleg Ifukube theme because Tom Horkenborg, Junkie XL, was talking a big game about how, oh, I saw all those crappy movies. There was this horrible movie about Godzilla fighting this puppet butterfly, and I thought I'd make a song better than that, he said in an interview or something like that. I'm like, I beg your pardon, sir?
Your pardon, sir?
But yeah, he said he wanted to, like, he had, like, the biggest skin African drum he could find to make this big, percussion thing that he samples. And he wanted to make a Godzilla theme that felt like those B-movies things. So they go back to the Godzilla theme, but it sounds dollar store Godzilla theme, if some people would say that. I mean, I grown to really like it, but it's like, instead of the usual...
Oh, no. You hate it. You despise it. It's when like, they dropped it on YouTube, and you go like, what the fuck was this shit?
Especially since...
You look like, you were like Joe Pesci in that one movie. He's just stepping out, looking around, and saying, what the fuck is this shit I'm looking at?
Yeah.
On top of that, this comes after King of the Monsters actually giving us faithful recreations of the Ifukube theme. And I'm not saying you can't make Godzilla without a new theme. 2014 actually made a good, soundtrack. It sounded like its own, but it felt like that in that same vibe. It had the same like rising drums, the same 3-note progression, but like it's modern. Whereas this one, it felt like it's trying to mimic what came before, but also like it's like taking hesitant steps of, okay, we're going to do this theme, but let's change the note. I'm not to give any spoilers, but I heard something similar happen to another monster theme in the upcoming New Empire. But the theme I do like. I actually do like King Kong's theme, which like I said, it's that orchestral flourish that played when he grabs Godzilla, and you hear it a couple of times when he's like looking for home, or when he's like, just interacting with Gia. So the music I don't entirely hate, but the Godzilla theme used to irk me. I have grown to like it.
And I would argue that it was probably made to sound like that just to make you feel uneasy about Godzilla's actions here. Because, I'm just saying this. If they had played the actual theme that Bear McCreary did for King of the Monsters, played it across Godzilla rampaging through Florida, you would have pretty much the biggest whiplash. Like, I should be cheering about the death of the people here? What?
It would be more like -1 using the Ifukube theme, like when he was attacking Ginza.
Yeah.
What to be fair, when -1 was doing is obviously the homage, like the OG. And obviously when the OG did their soundtrack, it was kind of
what's funny is
bombastic and like that.
No, I'm talking about the more menacing theme that plays when Noriko is hanging for life. In fact, funny enough, that theme didn't appear in the Godzilla series until King Kong vs. Godzilla. It's when they hear it goes like bam 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 bam. That came from King Kong vs. Godzilla. And this one is almost like a rip-off of it with the bam 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 bam. I'm like,
Yeah, it sounds like legally distinct.
But I grew to like it. But at the time, Derek was right. This was a thorn in my ass for a long time. Like, I'd be like, if it wasn't for the... And Bear McCreary did make a menacing version of that theme. It only played once, but it played when he meets Ghidorah in the snow and has to look up, didn't I kill you?
Yeah.
But okay, anyway, Derek's right. It does project an unease, and it matches better when you find out the other enemy that's in this thing. But I'm going to get to that later. The reason why Godzilla's so pissed off. So we do some Hollow Earth shenanigans, and those are fine. But let's talk about the other fight. Everyone talked about that was in all the ads, and Derek even pointed out, hey, being in a well-lit city actually lets you see the fucking fight.
Yeah.
It's just, look, I get why they wanted to do things with effects and all that. It's just trying to stand out. Like, look, we're not like the old school guys who like had to make sure the effects didn't overtake the suit actors, or because could you honestly imagine them trying to film an entire fight
with wind and rain,
rain going on?
Yeah. Although
it's most because like even Josie pointed out when we were watching movies leading up to -1, most of the suits that always appear in the ocean scenes are always the suits from the previous movies because they're old, degraded. It's like, fuck it, it's just gonna get wet and waterlogged. Let's just like ruin this old shit. We got this new one that we're gonna be saving for the city over here.
Like the tail flew off of the Heisei suit in Space Godzilla.
Yeah.
And you see
like imagine if they had made these nice shiny suits and then start the ray gun, and good God, the suits would and people would complain that it's just nothing but rubber suit monster movies. They would literally see nothing but rubber, like going against all that rain. Yeah. Of course, these new movies are like, oh, look how cool and like bombastic and natural and dramatic it looks with all this. So it's like, yeah, it's fine, but could you kind of dial it down just a little bit so you can see all the cool shit going on here?
At least Mothra was literally a light to the flame. Mothra was a moth that was like, I'm not a moth attracted to the lamp. I'm a moth who is the lamp.
Yep. I'm attracted to myself. Self-love.
But yeah. This fight, the King Kong versus Godzilla fight in Hong Kong, is definitely
it definitely to go back again. Like even fucking Pacific Rim managed to pull off doing the effects with rain and wind and water, but still have the light of the city actually help showcase like giant robots attacking all these like alien monsters.
And here's the big thing. The other monster fights in the other Godzilla MonsterVerse movies, people would always talk, especially if you're Angry Joe, would talk about that fun little word called cutaways. Godzilla vs. Kong has little to no cutaways for this final fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they only happen in between like at least like a good 3 or 5 minutes, and then cut away to the human. It's like, well, I guess round 2 goes to Kong,
and then back to the fight.
Yeah.
But it's not like, because people would say this, like Rodan would be pinning down Mothra, and then we'd cut down to Millie Bobby Brown freaking out in the house. Then we cut back to Godzilla and King Ghidorah already in the middle of a fight where Godzilla's looking winded, and then we cut to Mark and Emma having a moment, and then we go back to this guy where Ghidorah is fighting Godzilla, and we cut back to the Russell family looking up, and I think it's not that it happens a lot, it's just how people feel if it's pulling focus or not.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, the one that would piss off people in the Gareth Edwards days is, oh look, Muto and Godzilla are finally about to hit each other, no, the door's closing. Or look, Godzilla fights the Muto in Hawaii, and now we're cutting to the aftermath. Ugh.
Yeah. Now we're cutting to the aftermath. Oh, Godzilla and Muto are fighting, but let's focus on, the people running away with the nuke, and it's,
Whereas this one, no, it's like, you saw Monkey and Lizard fight, they're actually, tearing into the city, tearing into each other. On my rewatch last night, Derek could hear me actually go like, ooh, when stuff happened, like when Kong stuck the glowing axe into Godzilla's thigh.
Yeah. There's definitely you can actually feel the impacts of these things. Like I honestly feel like sometimes for some of these shots, I always feel like these would be the types of hits you would see suit actors going at each other if they were like trained wrestlers.
Mm-hmm. Like one moment I like is how Kong, while he's screwed in the water, is actually using the city's height to his advantage. Like he's ricocheting off buildings. He's using momentum to like punch Godzilla down, and he does try to do his iconic mouth break fatality, but Godzilla's like, nope, you're not doing it.
You lose your fingers that way.
He keeps on trying to use his fire beam, and basically you got a monkey fighting a living flamethrower.
Yep.
Yeah, a monkey armed with a reactive shrapnel of an old Godzilla beast tied to a stick.
Yeah.
Although they, like I said, I mentioned homages before. Another great homage is when Godzilla is about to blow fire, and Kong just takes the stick end of the axe and stick it in his mouth, which is like an homage to the famous 62 scene of Suit Kong stuffing a tree down Godzilla's throat.
Yeah.
Funny enough, one of the iconic images is the T-Rex getting a tree shoved in his jaws, but in the actual movie, I don't think such a shot exists.
No, I think they just like used the maquettes and just like set them up that way. But yeah, that doesn't actually happen in the movie. But that was a famous still that I remember every monster book about King Kong had in it. I think, it'd always be like that little shot. I remember, like even an old book of classic movie monsters in my library used to have. That was the big shot for King Kong, as him and the T-Rex fighting and him shoving this tree down the neck.
But the axe, and
Yeah.
Godzilla, it shows also Kong as a thinking animal, that Kong needs to use a tool to fight, this beast that kicked his ass by himself, with nothing in the sea. Although, there's a great moment me and Derek had to like laugh, saying now it's suddenly turned into a Universal Studios motion ride when they fly out of the Hollow Earth and in the middle of Kong jumping at them, and then they kind of turn around and there's Godzilla blowing his breath, and you feel like, where's the ride to Universal to that?
Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't try that. I remember even thinking like, oh man, I remember, funny thing, when people were saying Godzilla versus King Kong legendary Godzilla fighting King Kong might happen, I remember the first thing I thought was, oh man, that'd make a cool ride, and like I even thought to myself, maybe they could even do like a double ending for the ride where like, some days you'd go in and like Godzilla wins the fight, and other days you go in and Kong wins the fight, and it would be like this. Yeah, it'd be this way, like keep you coming back.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, considering the fact that Star Wars, Star Tours does that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a different combination of planets each time. Yeah.
To be fair, the closest you get is not a Godzilla King Kong crossover being an attraction, but it's a Godzilla and Evangelion crossover.
There's Ava.
Yeah. Yep. Even the scene of like Godzilla throwing the axe into the building, and it crashing into this like axe crashing into a big building. Like I know nothing like that ever happened in Ava, but it's hard not to subtly think, yeah.
The last of Longinus.
Yeah.
But what's funny is Godzilla still finds a way to like use his advantage. He becomes very beam spammy. There's a great moment that people will remember where Kong is trying to like jump and he suddenly takes a clip to the shoulder, and Godzilla even has this little like like smirk.
Yeah, that scared the crap out of my brother, and he was like, "Oh my god, I know why they don't." Yeah.
Like don't look at me like that ever again.
Yeah.
like the face, right, Derek?
Yeah.
Okay, Godzilla smiling should be outlawed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But so there's a part that's iconic where Kong uses the top of a building somehow to deflect Godzilla's beam to do like a Captain America Wonder Woman like deflection, and then get the axe from the large building to do the now iconic shot of Kong leaping with his axe. Like in fact, I think it's not quite the axe, but that's kind of the shirt I got.
Yeah.
But like that's like the image, and even his roar as he hits Godzilla is like a reuse of the King Kong confrontation ride roar.
Yeah. That's cool.
But what's funny is that Godzilla decided, no, I'm not done yet. But he was actually a little pissed off after that feedback blast knocked him off, and
yeah,
he went apeshit.
Yeah, he finally has this, like, even when he rises up, the theme plays, it sounds really scary, and you start seeing him, like, looking around, like, sniffing more, like, basically taking the fight more seriously, and what's funny is that not only is Kong a learning animal, but so is Godzilla, and it's like he kind of understands the notion of, like, okay, well, I can't just spam the beam attack, I clearly have to think a little bit more about what I'm doing, and then
he
you have...
beats him in the melee department, surprisingly.
Yeah. when he finally pulls out all the stops, and Kong has that moment where he does outsmart Godzilla one last time by throwing the crane at the building and like distracting him. And then Godzilla finally just completely lets loose, and then it's like it was so amazing. Like I remember even like me, my dad, and my brother, we were watching this. It almost felt like a genuine boxing match. You know, when you're having that moment where like the two people are getting like very, and you know, obviously none of us had money betting, but you could almost see us being like, oh yeah,
I got money.
yeah, come on, go, Lizard, go.
Oh man, like, and Derek pointed out how it's a cute homage that Kong is hanging off of a tower like the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Mostly with the old classic 33 adverts where they make Kong be bigger than the buildings itself. But it's
yeah. And too, like Anne's like human and like as big as the buildings if you actually like track the size properly.
Yeah. Like wow, he's got a 50-foot woman in his hand?
Yeah.
But go. But the part I remember that this part is a little head scratchy to me is that Kong goes full jump at Godzilla toward the spine area. You think he would get nicked a little doing that?
Yeah, you would. But I guess he figured it was better to do that than, you know, try to jump at the front where Godzilla would potentially just, like, blow a hole through his heart, you know, and I think that was the idea at the time, but it does end up kind of screwing Kong over the way you say, because Kong ends up, like, smashing him against a building, and you know those spines went to Kong's back a little bit, and that probably,
On top of that...
And that probably really hurt, yeah.
On top of that, he dislocates his arm. Like, I noticed this time around for sure. Godzilla bites him by the arm and swings him from the shoulder, so he dislocates him, so...
Yeah.
And then
he throws him at the building, and then like Kong barely even has time to realize what happens before Godzilla comes charging in. You're like, we've never seen Godzilla be this badass before.
On top of that, he's on all fours going after him, just scratching up his chest and asserting dominance by stepping on him, because the whole through line of the movie, they kept saying how Kong is an alpha, Godzilla's an alpha. You can't have two of them in the same room, and this will never stop till one of them yields, but Kong refuses to yield. That's the deal. Even Godzilla has a look on his face of like bow before doing that iconic roar at his face, and Kong, rather than be afraid, decides to defiantly roar back.
Fuck you!
Yeah. Fuck you!
And even,
fuck you!
Even Godzilla can't help but, nod like, I have respect for you, but he's got other problems.
You are the second best kaiju, and then he stomps his chest. Note that I said second. At least that's what I.
You got chutzpah, kid.
Yeah.
Or
you're still second best.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were good, kid. Very good. As long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, eh?
Yeah. Second best, eh?
So what's funny is this whole movie was basically Adam Wingard having a schoolyard argument with a kid back in the day about who would win, Godzilla and Kong. And he says, when I was making this movie, I thought back to that argument. So he says, this is his way of putting a stamp by saying, yes, Godzilla stomps Kong.
Yeah.
But the movie ain't over yet. So now for the third thing that we've all...
It's funny considering the fact that I actually called the fact that Godzilla would actually whoop Kong. Consider the fact that when we did this the first time at King Kong vs. Godzilla, Kong had the top billing, obviously. So, of course, the victory went to him. But here, Godzilla got the top billing, and little me was thinking, like, what if maybe they would actually do something different? Now that he's got top billing, maybe Godzilla would actually win this bout. I remember you were saying, it's like, they wouldn't make it that obvious. It's just silly. And as soon as they saw us, it's like, fuck you! I got it right!
Yeah, you actually called it. I'm like, okay, I admit it, yeah. So I guess by that logic, did the Alien win in Alien vs. Predator?
Well, there was the chest burster at the end.
To be fair, nobody ever checked to see if anyone got the chest burster.
And, well, now... You could argue that with Freddy vs. Jason, with Freddy trapping Jason in the eternal dream, where Jason thinks he's won, but Freddy's like telling the audience,
Yeah.
I think you might be onto something there. Mothra did beat Godzilla in Mothra vs. Godzilla.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I know things going into the movie because my stupid ass is part of a kaiju fan community, and they look at every piece of news and merchandise that comes out, so I kind of knew this third party was going to be a thing. I think Derek kept saying, no, we're not doing this BVS thing where they're fighting and then a common enemy has to make them unite, and we don't get
to be fair, I kind of suspected that we were going to have a robot involved.
When Apex Cybernetics was all over the place.
Yeah.
And then you see
that, and also the fact that I could actually see it in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you kept saying, no, well, maybe, because, well, Derek, you were right and wrong, because, one, they didn't team up in the end to fight Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla didn't interrupt the fight. They actually had Godzilla and Kong have their proper fight, and Godzilla did win his ass, because you were afraid that they were going to do the pussy thing and not have a definitive winner by having them both have a temporary truce and then not settle their difference. He said, no, they actually had Godzilla and Kong settle their difference before having to deal with this party crasher.
Yeah. They made they even showed that, like, okay, yes, Kong did fall. We fulfilled the promise made by all the posters of one will fall. Yeah. If we fulfilled our promise, so we got that over with. Now you can introduce the third party, yeah.
So, in the middle of the movie, Team Godzilla found out that Godzilla was attacking Apex Cybernetics for a reason, in that they have created a metal double of him in Mecha Godzilla. And that was a thing where people were wondering if we would even get a Mecha Godzilla when they were first announcing the MonsterVerse. Because 2014 was so realistic.
It's funny. At that point, most people saw that stupid in Ready Player One and say, "Well, there it is. There's your Mechagodzilla. There's no way you're going to see that in MonsterVerse."
Yeah, they're never thinking of themselves. If they have a Mechagodzilla in this movie, surely they licensed Mechagodzilla. So why wouldn't they just? Yeah.
I mean, come on, Mechagodzilla is one of the most iconic, enemies of Godzilla outside of Ghidorah and Mothra.
Yeah,
and
they already had those
to the point where even James Rolfe stated, picking his top 5 suggestions for newcomers, that he would look to see any movies that involve Mothra, Ghidorah, and Mechagodzilla, because those 3 were the de facto of the kaiju lineup.
What's funny is that in Ready Player One, Mechagodzilla is in the book, but they explicitly state that it's the Kiryu version of Mechagodzilla from the 2003 movie. But for Ready Player One, the movie, I guess they decided, Spielberg decided to make his own version.
His own
which
his own version of the character. Which,
if we ever do get a Mechagodzilla, would he look like that, Derek?
Well, I was gonna say it's fine that they did their own version. I mean, it would really diminish Kiryu's reputation and be used for such a nefarious, scandalous, money-grubbing asshole.
Played by Chris.
Literally, only second to only Corporate Commander from Angry Joe show, of being the pinnacle ideal of if we can charge it, we can double it.
Yeah.
Do you think Sorrento would charge $60 for fucking Blue?
He would charge you $80 and claim it's all part of quadruple A gaming.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to actually put that on screen real quick, just because I want to say that I did think that was a badass design. If we ever did get a Mechagodzilla in the MonsterVerse, it would probably look something like the Ready Player One Mechagodzilla.
Yeah.
I would probably admit that the mecha we got in this movie is probably a Mark 1, essentially. If they had actually time to fine tune it, someone crazy enough to actually think this guy was actually knocking Godzilla around quite a bit. I mean, maybe we should actually still invest in that, but actually invest more into it so it can handle other monsters.
Yeah, I think they said this is pretty much the beta version.
And then this fucker would pretty much be the finalized version.
Yeah.
But yeah, there actually is a lot of beautiful concept art in the Godzilla vs. King Kong art book that shows what Mechagodzilla would have looked like. But yeah, Mechagodzilla is revealed to be the reason Godzilla is even pissed off at humanity, because not only is it supplanting his status as Alpha, but also it's using the remains of his hated enemy.
Yeah. It's it still exists, just
Oh yeah, I wonder what that after credit scene was going to allude to.
Yeah.
That's the one missed opportunity for me, is that they didn't bring back Tywin Lannister's Charles Dance back as Jonah Allen in some way. Because let's face it, I love that guy. I mean, he's the best part of Game of Thrones for me after a couple of other characters. So, and he was the best part of Alien 3 until he died.
Yeah, exactly. And he, and it would have been nice to get him, just because he is such a talented actor, like like I guess maybe he could have been the one piloting Mechagodzilla instead of I don't know. You're right.
You're right. Okay, now let's get to that little business. Is the fact that Walter Simmons, of course, the minute you saw his commercial about how we're doing the fastest human potential with cybernetics and microchips and all this stuff, you're going, Terry Dixon, that's one for one the Cyberdyne pre-show in the Terminator 2 ride.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's no surprise he ended up being the bad guy. So but they introduced Ren Serizawa, the estranged son of Dr. Serizawa, who we've barely heard about until this movie.
Yeah,
and he's not given a lot to do. We just see him staring moodily off a rooftop in pain at Godzilla, talk to Dr. Lin saying Gojira, because I think they needed someone to say Gojira's name. And then he's in the pilot seat, and hell, I think they probably another Ava reference is when they get the new mineral for Mechagodzilla, because Mechagodzilla can't be properly powered until they get Hollow Earth energy, and even he says we don't know what this data could do to him, and he says right away, "Get in the damn chair." I'm like,
yes.
Get in the robot, Shinji. Yeah.
Why do I get the feeling if someone actually flat out says that, hey, let's make an Evangelion movie, Adam Wingard would be slamming doors wide open and charging through a huge group of people and saying, "Give it to me, you fuckheads!"
Although I do think he does want to do a Thundercats movie next.
I would actually be interested in that. Not gonna lie.
With him at the helm, that's definitely
Well, we know he can get the craziness about because of his MonsterVerse movies. But here's the thing: King Ghidorah's brain is being used to communicate with another King Ghidorah skull inside Mechagodzilla. That's how you can control it, and it's neural linked to the pilot's brain. But here's a funny: they did their homework for this. Of course, once Mechagodzilla does get powered up, the control mechanism from King Ghidorah springs open, and it takes over the system, which, if you read a manga version and an old script version for Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, the idea was that it was made from the remains of Mecha King Ghidorah, and that in the middle of the mission, the King Ghidorah's programming would revert, and it would be sentenced to kill Godzilla. And I think it succeeded in killing him. I think.
In the manga, it succeeds in killing Godzilla, and Mechagodzilla is even more evil in that because he even turns to baby, and I think opens up his chest, reveals cannon, literally just a whole cannon to blast the poor little baby until Godzilla gets brought back by Rodan, and it's holy Jesus.
Then also, MonsterVerse Mechagodzilla is the first time since '75 that Mechagodzilla was actually evil.
Yeah, explicitly evil and irredeemably, and he even comes with I know a lot of people when he turns to Godzilla and he has that sort of down. My brother was oh look, he's so mustache-twirly evil, he even has his own song built in.
He kind of laughs this little conk, conk, conk. The noise kind of reminds me of Mecha Sonic in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where you go to Sky Sanctuary and you have this gold and blue metal Sonic, and it makes this pinging noise, a dugger 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 dugger. That's what Mechagodzilla's bioacoustics remind me of.
Yeah, I can see that. And the design is is interesting, and this Mechagodzilla is interesting because my brother, what he said was that he didn't think it was his favorite Mechagodzilla design, but definitely this one had a lot to offer. He has missiles literally everywhere. Even in his shoulders and stuff. This one is really badass.
He looks more like Mechagodzilla than whatever the fuck the anime trilogy's Mechagodzilla was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
It's
at least this one looks dinosaurian, at least.
Well, it makes sense why he would look like that because he was designed by aliens, but
yeah,
it's just all spines and no face, and you're like,
what is this?
But Some,
I see all the mecha, but I see a distinct lack of the Godzilla portion here.
Yeah, only half the names being fulfilled here.
yeah, but yeah. So this Godzilla. Well, the reason I'm a little pissed off by Ren Sarazawa is that he does fuck all, and he ends up getting taken out of the movie rather unceremoniously. And you're going, well, he could have been named Mifune or Toshiro, no relation to the Sarazawa we know, and
Yeah, and it would have you'd have the same reaction, and like it just seems kind of weird. They're like, oh, he's related to Sarazawa. All right.
Okay, and
and
I think the dynamic would have been interesting if Sarazawa was still alive, so you can try to reason with Ren and Ren saying, how you've abandoned me for your Gojira, now I'm gonna destroy your precious.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and
but no, like I said, and what's funny is he's actually the guy who's against testing the Hollow Earth energy, Mechagodzilla until they run stuff.
Yeah.
But it would have been interesting if Simmons was the one saying, "Yeah, well, we just got this thing. We have to run tests," and Ren's like, "No, we killed Gojira now." Like then he would actually have more motivation.
Yeah, and he'd be an actual and he'd actually have weight on the plot, instead of have an effect on the plot versus now where it's like he's just kind of there, despite him having such an important connection to the previous films.
I don't know. Like I says, the Ren Sarazawa thing probably could have been handled much better, but it is what it is. And then we got Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla's actually getting his ass kicked. Now here's where the fan debate happens, where you think that Godzilla, had he not fought King Kong full power, would he have been able to fight Mechagodzilla and Santos Ho? Because in this one, Mechagodzilla is literally wiping windows with Godzilla.
Yeah, exactly. Which I mean, in fairness, like Mechagodzilla tends to usually do. Like I think if you watch every movie with Mechagodzilla in it, I don't think Godzilla ever does defeat Mechagodzilla entirely on his own without the help of another kaiju. Because like in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, he has King Caesar, and then I guess he does, but even then, like in Terror of Mechagodzilla, like Katsura still has to shoot herself in the stomach, to malfunction Mechagodzilla's brain. And then in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, he needs Rodan to come and help power him up. In Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, he doesn't really win, although he doesn't die. So it's I guess he kind of wins in that regard, but it's still not he doesn't definitively beat Mechagodzilla. Then Tokyo SOS, Mechagodzilla straight up wins that one. I don't really think there's any debate.
And then the Polygon.
Yeah.
I don't even know what happened there, to be honest. I'm still trying to process what even happened in that whole series.
Yeah. I can't even remember what happened in that. But yeah, and it's debatable if and I think Wingard probably wants that to be debatable of would Godzilla have been able to beat Mechagodzilla on his own if he was at full strength, because I feel like Wingard is the kind of guy who would make that purposefully ambiguous, but still allow Kong to win at the end.
What did you think, Derek? You think Godzilla could have stand toe if he was fully rested, or you think it would have been?
I think the fight would have started in his favor. Then again, we are dealing with the fact that this Mechagodzilla is literally being charged by Hollow Earth energy, and much like the androids in Dragon Ball, they don't fucking tire out.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps circulating. Meanwhile, Godzilla's just wasting all this energy, and then, of course, Mecha being brain powered by Ghidorah, it's a bit of a dirty ass fighter.
Mm-hmm. On top of that,
with using its tail as a means to attack while just pitting him against the building.
What I like is that he uses jetpack momentum to power his punches to grapple around Godzilla and use his weight against him in a monster Aikido, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, Godzilla. I feel Godzilla would humble the mech's ass for at least a good chunk, but then he would have probably spent too much of his energy in the wrong move, and would have left himself wide open to just get his ass whooped.
No, but this one, Mechagodzilla straight up just mops the floor with Godzilla. Even Godzilla does his best attacks, and they do a part where I'm like, okay, this totally reminds me of the Doomsday Superman beam clash, where they both clash their beams and Mechagodzilla, the Hollow Earth energy, just blows him against the wall. And even Godzilla's thinking, I am not used to being on this end.
Yeah.
It's especially demeaning in the fact that, tired or not, Mecha could literally grab Godzilla by his tail and toss him like a rag doll.
Even Derek, while mimicking voices, kept saying, it was saying, don't you dare, don't you, oh, yeah.
Don't you fucking dare!
And
don't
then,
you,
course,
oh, you are.
Even to add insult to injury, Mechagodzilla was looking to kill him with the same move Godzilla killed the Muto with.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Open wide, bitch move.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I still remember what Gareth Edwards said. When we first did that move, we were just going to have a break the jaw of the Muto like, King Kong, but we thought, one of us said, well, what if we actually had him breathe atomic breath down the throat? And he said, that is so crazy, they never would let us do it. And then when he told the producer that, he said, great, do that. And they were surprised they let them do that.
Yeah.
So, Kong, he has to be convinced by Gia to, help Godzilla, because he's like, that guy kicked my ass, I think I'm going to help him. She says, no, that big, scary metal monster's a real enemy. So, Kong decides to, save Godzilla. Even Godzilla has a look of, huh? When,
didn't expect this. Yay. Anyway, Godzilla has to learn, some bit of humility. And my dad loved that ending because, the whole time we were watching the movie, my dad was kind of the one. Because, my brother and I, we kind of can't help but, get into the childish mindset of, hey, Godzilla kicked King Kong's ass. King Kong sucked, but my dad is the one trying to be, peacemaker and be like, well, maybe Godzilla and Kong can be friends. And, and I remember when, Mechagodzilla, shows up, he was the one being like, well, they're going to team up finally. And it was like my dad being like this kind of sweet, fatherly presence. I don't know how to explain it, but it's...
That is great.
And my dad is always going to make jokes whenever Mechagodzilla shows up about Mechagodzilla shooting missiles at his ass because, of the Destroy All Monsters game.
Oh, yeah, the jet boost attack.
Yeah, the jet boost attack. My dad would always be like, oh, he's...
shooting missiles out his ass.
Yeah, shooting missiles. That's what he called it for some reason. That's what he still calls it this day.
I wouldn't be surprised if Apex's Mechagodzilla did shoot missiles out his ass, though.
Probably does, yeah. I mean, if he has them in the shoulders, there's no reason it can't be there too.
Another thing too was the drill tail. Looks like that'd be pretty gnarly.
Yeah. To see that done. It's again, this Mechagodzilla is every Mechagodzilla, combined. You have the drill, which, I mean, Kiryu had a drill hand, but now he has, a drill tail, which maybe is, more effective as, being, you can have both the arms on the side and then hit him with the tail, kind of like a xenomorph.
And then, of course, Mechagodzilla's control system is in King Ghidorah's head, and Team Godzilla finally contributes to the story by trying to, figure out the password, and they decide to stop it with Bernie's drink that he set off as a MacGuffin earlier, that the day I give up is when I drink all this.
Yeah. I have to die with you kids and sober.
Yeah, that's your solution? I gotta die with you and sober? And of course, Mechagodzilla ends up malfunctioning just for a second, but that wasn't enough to defeat him, and of course Kong gets a boost from Godzilla of charging his axe, because he does stop him with his axe, but it's not cutting until it's charged with the Hollow Earth energy from Godzilla's power source. And just goes to town on Mecha G. Yeah,
goes to town, tears him apart, and then roars with his severed head. And I think I remember when we originally talked about
a move really ripped off from classic Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
Even the way he's holding it, you can just imagine the King Kong wins fatality, MK11 format next to him.
Yeah.
In fact, when we were first watching it live, we were like, is he gonna? We were just cheering like wrestling fans when he does grab him by the neck and just the whole spine comes out.
Yeah, pulls off his head just like he did with the war bats. Is that what they're called? The weird flying things. And I mean, it would have been funny to see him even bite into it in his excitement. All he'd be like,
this is made out of metal.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that the war bats always reminded me of the alien cobra from the Kenner Aliens line because of the membrane.
Totally see that. Yeah, even the way it flew kind of reminded me of the flying face huggers from Aliens Armageddon.
And it kind of also looks like the King Cobra from Godzilla the series.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
But oh man, the Hollow Earth stuff is ripe. In fact, I think they wanted to do more exploration with that, so that's why. Looks like we're getting more Hollow Earth and New Empire.
Yeah, Hollow Earth and a Kong society, which like I mean, I know Godzilla's supposedly not going to be in that one a whole lot, or at least that's what some early reactions I heard. I don't know if they're true because like some of them were like reactions coming before the movie was even out yet. But some people were saying he wasn't going to be in it for very long, and which almost did kind of make me wonder if like Godzilla X Kong, like maybe Godzilla was originally supposed to be a surprise that popped up at the end, which would have been kind of cool. Sorry, yeah.
But what's funny is that one of the things to get Kong to go with Hollow Earth, because they bring him. There's another homage to Toho by having him being lifted by balloons, well, helicopters, but pretty much like the balloons from '62. They say that you might have more of your family down in the
Hollow Earth, and he won't be alone. And
and thanks to the new Empire, we find out that that wasn't entirely a lie.
Yeah, it was only it's they just didn't know,
Mm-hmm. But so yeah, what's funny is they kill Mechagodzilla. There's a great moment where everyone's thinking the movie's over, then Godzilla roars, and even Kong has a look on his face of like, I need a vacation. And when Godzilla shows up, he's like, seriously, man? I saved your ass and you still want to talk it out? And
you only saved me because I powered up your axe. That victory's still half mine.
Basically, Godzilla still says, if you want to keep going at this, I'll go at us. And Kong finally relents and drops the axe.
Yeah.
All right. Godzilla accepted that submission. But then Derek and I pantomimed making a joke that Godzilla's saying, okay, here's my deal. You stay in your own little kingdom. I stick it up here. Agreed? And Kong's dropping the axe. It's like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
All right, by the way, we actually worked pretty well as a team there. Yeah, agreed. But this is a one-time thing. This is never, ever, ever going to happen again.
It's a cue New Empire.
Yeah.
What's funny is originally the movie was supposed to end right after Godzilla sinks into the sea, and then the Kong and Gia sequence at the end was supposed to be a bookend, like a after credit sequence. But they figured, well, who's going to stay for the end of this one? So, and what if this is our last movie? So they decided start with Kong, end with Kong, and it's happy because he's mad that he can't find a home. That's why he's throwing trees at the dome, and here he is finally in a place where he can actually breathe and run and live, and it finally does feel like home.
Yeah. It's kind of a nice moment. It's kind of like the ending of Mighty Joe Young from, was that 1998? Yeah.
Yeah. It was 99. Yeah, it was 98. Because it was like about the same year as Bug's Life came out. So.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, now what is funny is that you're probably hearing how we didn't bring up too much human shit. Well, there's not much to bring up about them, that they pretty much fill out their role as well. Eileen does work well as the Kong whisperer, so to speak. Gia is the heart of the whole thing. Nathan is there for comedic relief, like confusing the coward word for bravery because they wanted to play a trick on him.
Yeah.
Maya's just, eye candy until she gets smashed. And Walter Simmons is literally mustache twirling bad guy, but he does have a funny moment where he's explaining a beautiful dream he had, and Mechagodzilla happens to activate that minute and kill him. And even Bernie's all, oh man, I wanted to hear the rest of that speech. But let's face it, as much as we love the actors in these things, we're really here to see Godzilla and Kong as the main event. So, thankfully, -1 shows that you can have a Godzilla movie with very interesting humans that drive the story along. And people think that, we're going to regress again with Godzilla and Kong New Empire, with the humans just being, devices to tell us stuff like, that's not Kong, or give exposition about how thousands of years ago, the apes and the titans, like...
it's people always find...
Although, it does look like the Trapper character played by Beast's actor, Dan Stevens, is going to be the personality of the thing. He gives me, like, a Captain Boomerang, Aaron Taylor Johnson vibe in... the guy, all right, lovelies, don't try to swallow your tongue, stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's going to have some personality, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
So
he'll be the human character,
But yeah, so New Empire. What's funny is how this is the coming out on an anniversary year for Godzilla.
Yeah, because this is exactly 70 years. Yeah.
Now
I'm literally off the cusp of -1 getting an Oscar win.
On top of that,
for visual effects, but it's still an Oscar win nonetheless.
And 10 years since 2014 came out, we're now here. Who'd have thought that? You have no idea what's coming was literal about what happened afterwards.
Yeah. We had no idea what was coming afterwards. Yeah.
So, do you guys think that, regardless of how it performs, New Empire could be the end, or you think there's still? I mean, Adam did say he has an idea for another movie if he had the chance.
Dude, I think there's still more concepts from the original Godzilla movies to keep going. I keep honestly suggesting that a future big movie that's gonna be on the same level of hype as Destroy All Monsters is gonna involve the zillion alien race coming to sap up our Hollow Earth energy, because they've already drained up all their planet's energies, both on the surface and their own hollow core thing.
They did explain aliens already by saying that King Ghidorah is an extraterrestrial.
Yeah, already that door's been opened.
And you could literally have another Ghidorah come in, but be branded as Kaiser Ghidorah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's also that one team.
Just imagine, this is the difference between that Destroy All Monsters and this, is that we have King Kong and probably Little Kong involved in the whole matchup, and probably even introducing other creatures that were introduced across the franchise,
In
the Monarch Legacy of Monsters show.
Yeah, I feel like that should be their end goal. It's to do a Destroy All Monsters meets Final Wars, but with the modern day monster reverse spectacle.
There is still one little loose end that was started in King of the Monsters that I kind of want to see fulfill. I know Derek and Aaron are probably thinking, okay, I know how you would sell that to the general audience, but the fact that a man-made weapon, the Oxygen Destroyer, was introduced.
Oh yeah, we should also have to bring in that thing accidentally also created another Titan, a pseudo Titan that they would probably hype it up in trailers a Titan that should never have been.
Yeah, the Destroyer would just make me go nuts. Like as James Rolfe likes to say about
That's a Destroyer!
Saying he looks like the goddamn
devil.
I mean, that monster would just if they tease him in any way, in any capacity, I probably would scream louder than when Ian did when he saw King Ghidorah's mural.
Yeah, probably. My brother almost screamed when we were watching King of the Monsters, and he honestly thought that's where they were going with the end credits, and it was going to be Destroy at the end.
Just Ghidorah's head.
Yeah. But it would have been amazing. I even remember the fan arts coming out of Destroya will be the there were people who actually thought he was going to be the one coming in to be the final big bad, but in fairness, they probably couldn't have done that because he's way too massive, and not even just literally, but just even as a concept, he's too massive, to just shove in there at the very end. He'd have to be the main villain if he showed up.
I have him on screen right now, and like I said, just imagine a MonsterVerse version of that.
Yeah.
But if he never happens, I won't be disappointed. I mean, there's the oxygen weapon was just thrown in just as a cute reference, but if they actually do destroy her eventually, like I said, I would definitely be he's the only one who can go bigger than Mechagodzilla and Ghidorah. True, Destroyer didn't kill Godzilla, he killed his son, but when you think of all-time big bads, I think the only other one who's just as iconic is Gigan and Megalon, but
yeah.
Good luck trying to make a robot chicken work in the MonsterVerse.
Yeah.
Then again, we said the same thing about a big fluffy moth, and they managed to make Mothra work. So, if they do, for some reason, some fans are insistent that they might try a Space Godzilla.
Yeah. Which is it's kind of weird that they're so complaining about Godzilla running, that's so ridiculous. Oh, but also give us Space Godzilla. Yeah.
Make up your mind.
Yeah.
What would make me laugh is if somehow they find a way to include Zilla somehow, a subspecies of Titanus Gojira.
That'd be funny. That'd be interesting.
Knowing them, they would probably make it as a joke that we see that creature and then it gets curb stopped by Kong and Hollow Earth.
But yeah, New Empire looks like it's going in a much more Showa direction. You got Godzilla running. You got King Kong getting like battle tech weapons. You got Mini Kong. Suko being introduced, and you got this giant
Godzilla evolved form.
You got this
ape. It's funny. It's funny that people keep saying like, "Oh, great! Now we're just have feminist propaganda on Godzilla." And I just sit there like,
"What?
You fuckers do know that Millennium Godzilla had the purple fins, right?"
On top of that, I just watched Elemental for the first time, and whenever Ember would get super angry and mad, her flames would go from yellow to this magenta pink color that was much more destructive than her standard flames whenever she lost her temper.
Yeah.
So there's precedent for the colors, man.
Yeah. It's not something that just goes randomly.
Would you say that too much pink energy is dangerous?
Yes, indeed. In this case, it is. But like I say though, it looks like it's going to be crazy. I mean, you got a giant orangutan using a bone whip to throw a building at Godzilla and Kong with the mechanical axe and stuff like that. So
yeah. So
sign me up.
Yeah. Exactly.
Although I know people are saying, oh, we're going back to the stupid stuff after finally getting taken seriously with -1. Guys, there will always be another movie like a -1 down the line, and there always will be silly stuff like Godzilla vs. Megalon, where Godzilla tail slides into a giant cockroach being assisted by a giant robot man.
A giant robot man that can change size, by will, not even like out of design.
It's funny that people think that we can't have one or the other, when literally, like, Japan literally gets energized by the fact that people are loving Godzilla being done in the West properly now, to the fact that even the original Japanese audiences love watching these Western movies too.
Look.
So they would be like, okay, how about we do our turn then? And then you have stuff like fucking Shin Godzilla, and Godzilla Singularity, and then Godzilla -1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On top of that, the directors are good with each other. Adam Wingard T -1 and praised the hell out of it. And Takashi Yamazaki actually said he already saw King Kong vs. Godzilla and says it's very Showa in a way that reminded him of his childhood, and he liked it. There's no Japan has contempt for American films, or the Americans think they're better than Japan. No, they all love the same character.
We got over that in the 2000s. That age is gone and over with.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that's infuriating, is seeing this rift happen between fans that say Godzilla has to be this or that, when the creators themselves are saying he can be anything.
Yeah, it's like saying like there's one way to do like Frankenstein or like Dracula. It's like these characters have been around for so long. There's so many different ways to do them. Just let every option play out. Sorry.
You could have your Dracula that's literally like a monstrous figure hunting the Demir ship for an entire movie, or you could literally have it be like an allegory for a toxic relationship in Renfield.
Yeah.
Or you can have him be like a concerned dad with Hotel Transylvania.
Or like this tragic hero figure in Dracula Untold, which I still haven't seen that, but I really want to.
But yeah.
It's like you could just do all these different things. It doesn't have to just be one thing.
He doesn't have to always be Bela Lugosi.
Godzilla doesn't have to be one thing. Godzilla is Godzilla.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with... Here's the thing. People will say this about Godzilla. You know who got over this a long time ago? Batman fans. They're used to seeing him run around with a dynamite bomb, and him mowing down people in the Batmobile, or him, speaking with a cancer voice, or him,
calling children retarded.
So there's many versions of him.
Yeah.
But they're all legit Batman. Well, maybe Crazy Steve. The jury's out on Crazy Steve, but...
Yeah.
God. I still laugh at the fact that he runs over a Gotham police car and he has like the most maniacal grin on him. You're going, is this not the Batman who laughs? This is All-Star Batman?
Yeah. All-Star Batman, then the Joker doesn't laugh at all, so it's like we're in some alternate universe where like Bruce Wayne and Joker switch places.
No. if you did Frank Miller's Godzilla, there'd be a lot of narration about how the buildings are talking to the main character.
Yeah. I hear them scream as he smashes them to pieces. I hear them scream. The buildings scream.
That
My
actually would
lungs.
actually be a lot more sadistic. The fact that he humanized the buildings so much that even when Godzilla comes in, he's like, "Fuck your buildings!"
Yeah.
It'd be like the screeching shrill of steel and metal has no emphasis. The screeching steel and metal scream as the glass falls on
everyone. The brick and mortar breaking apart as he smashes.
Frank Miller's Godzilla would just be a 9/11 allegory.
Yeah, probably.
What are you trying to say, Frank? Anyway, wow, we went way off course. The point is, Batman's been so many things. Godzilla can too. In fact, I find it funny that Godzilla and Batman almost met.
Yeah, back in the 60s.
Maybe as an animated movie that could happen. I think Toho has to be okay with that. I think they actually did write an early draft of the script, so
yeah. Well, they're doing Godzilla and Kong versus the Justice League in comics right now, and maybe they could do that as like a little animated film. That'd be cool. As part of like the DC lineup.
Like the Adam West style animated
movies. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Anyway, well, I think we rambled on long enough, but this has been pretty fun. I'm glad I got your guys' insight talking about this and where we can go. So, you guys have any other thoughts you want to share about this particular movie?
About Godzilla vs. Kong, it's a fun time. You know, it's a fun time, and it was a fun build-up, and you know, it's a movie I'm always gonna love talking about. You know, and it's one I think I pretty much revisit every single year, even if I don't rewatch the whole thing. I always rewatch those fights, you know, just to like kind of reinvigorate that like, you know, inner child, you know, and like
that's great.
in just a pleasant way,
And
I feel like it was definitely a movie that the world needed when we were still like going like, what is happening? Are we trying to get back to normality here?
Would you say like this is like quote Dr. Lind, we need Godzilla versus Kong. The world needs it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say one last thing about it. I can't really rank the MonsterVerse films because I love each of them. I know people like to say this was the weakest film, this was the strongest film. I loved Godzilla 2014 for the grounded take it brought to the monster. I loved Kong Skull Island because it had a fun human cast, and it was great to see a 76 Kong Nam allegory. Very violent, I might add. King of the Monsters is a movie I never dreamed I would see on the big screen with that kind of budget, and Mothra just brings me to tears every time I see that movie. And this movie, it's fun. It's not, dumb fun sounds like an insult, but it really is just, you know, like Transformers, like, you know, the first Transformers movie where you want to see Decepticons and Autobots clash in a big budget setting, and this movie gives me that. And the only thing that my small little gripes would be the theme and the waste of the Sarazawa character. They could have been named anybody at this point. You could have called him Ikari, and I would have laughed about it.
Yeah.
But
I must say, if I had ranked them by style, the Kong Skull Island would definitely have shotgunned itself up to number one for me.
It has great style. There's no doubt about that, man. Tom Hiddleston with a machete cutting a bat in half and blue blood coming out in a green gas mask is just...
It's like, look at the colors, man. The colors are everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Godzilla 2014 is a very gray movie. Kong Skull Island is just bursting with color.
Yep.
And I say Godzilla vs. Kong is a good middle ground of that. I think King of the Monsters is a little too blue.
Yeah.
I guess you could argue Godzilla was going through his blue period at that point.
Yep. That's why they call it the blues.
But yeah, so what a long, strange trip this 10 years in the MonsterVerse has been, and it's not over yet, but New Empire's coming out. I'm looking forward to seeing that soon, and we'll be talking about that soon. So I want to thank you all for listening to us. I think you can tell how much we enjoyed this and enjoy talking about it, and I'm glad to finally get a version of this out there. So if you stuck around this long, thank you for listening. This is Jones Cat 79, aka Chris, signing off along with my co-host Derek, aka Dark Neon.
Let them fight.
And my other co-host, Werewolf Over, aka Ian.
Werewolf River has mysteriously disappeared. only Jonesy and Dark Neon remain. As we wish them luck on their long voyage home. Sorry, I probably misquoted that, but
Godzilla has disappeared. Yeah.
yeah.
And, okay, guys, thank you all for tuning out, and until next time, man. Stay believing, kaiju podcasters, or whatever the heck Bernie used to say as his funny sign off. Let's catch you at the next one.